Hi, my name is Claire. But before I tell you my story, let me ask you something. Have you ever been the black sheep in your own family? You know, the one who always did everything right, stayed quiet, showed up when needed, but still got treated like they didn't matter? Have you ever been the one who sacrificed, kept the peace, but somehow ended up being left out when it really counted? And have you ever quietly walked away, not with anger, not with a fight, but with silence, just to watch karma do the talking for you later? If any of that sounds familiar, I want you to stay with me. Because this story, it's not just mine. It might be yours too. Before we dive in, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or your small town down in the comments. Tell me where you're tuning in from. And while you're at it, I want you to think, what would you have done if your own parents looked you in the eye and said, "We're giving everything to your brother. The house, the money, all of it." Would you have screamed? Fought? Or would you have simply said, "Okay," and vanished? Because that's exactly what I did. It happened so fast, but the moment still plays in my mind like it was yesterday. I remember the room. I remember the look on their faces. I remember how sure they were, like they'd already decided long before they said the words out loud. They didn't even flinch. They just said it like it was normal, like it made sense. I could feel the lump forming in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just smiled a little and nodded. "Hey," I said. But that one word, that one moment, would be the start of something they never saw coming. Let me take you back to the day it all started. It was a Sunday afternoon. One of those days that feel heavy even before anything happens. I remember the sun slipping through the window blinds, casting those thin golden lines across the living room floor. Everything looked peaceful. But my heart? It wasn't. Something in me just knew. This wasn't going to be a normal family talk. I was sitting on the edge of the couch, hands folded in my lap, like a child waiting to be scolded. My mother sat across from me, her lips tight, her eyes trying to avoid mine. My father was standing near the fireplace, his arms crossed as if he was preparing for something unpleasant, but necessary. Then it came. My mother cleared her throat. "Claire, your father and I have made a decision." I didn't say anything. I just looked at them. Waiting. She continued. "We're giving the house and the inheritance to your brother." Just like that. No soft landing. No explanation at first. Just the words. My stomach twisted, but my face stayed still. I blinked once slowly. My heart wanted to race, to scream, but I didn't let it. I just listened. "He deserves it more," my father said firmly, his voice low but certain. "He's a man. He'll carry the family name. He'll have a wife and children to provide for. You're just..." He stopped himself. But my mother finished the sentence in her own way. "You're just a girl. You'll marry one day. You'll take someone else's name. You'll have a husband to take care of you." And there was. I could feel the sting rising in my chest, burning like acid, but I kept my expression soft. I didn't trust my voice, so I said nothing. My father went on. "We know this might hurt you a little, but we have to think of what's best for the family. And your brother, he's the future." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to ask if they remembered how many nights I stayed up late helping them balance their bills, how many hours I put in at the diner during college so I wouldn't need their money. I wanted to ask if they noticed how my brother never showed up for holidays unless there was something in it for him. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I nodded. Slowly. Gently. Like I agreed. "Okay," I whispered. My mother looked up at me, surprised. "That's it? No argument?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "No, Mom. If that's how you feel, then, okay." Because I knew something they didn't. I knew how to walk away without slamming the door. I knew how to carry pain without turning it into noise. And I knew that silence sometimes is the loudest reply you can give. I stood up from the couch, straightened my blouse, and looked around that room. The room I grew up in, the walls that heard my laughter, my cries, my secrets. And just like that, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I kissed my mom on the cheek, gave my dad a soft nod, and walked out the front door. They didn't call after me. They didn't ask me to stay. And I didn't expect them to. The air outside felt colder than it should have, but it helped. It woke me up. Told me this was real. And as I walked down that driveway, the same one I used to ride my bike on as a kid, I felt the weight lift. Not all of it, but enough to take a full breath again. They had made their choice. Now I was going to make mine. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream or cry. I didn't leave a note. I just walked upstairs, picked up my old travel bag from the back of the closet and started packing. No one followed me. No one knocked. Maybe they thought I'd cool off and come back downstairs with a forced smile like I always did. But something inside me had changed. This time it wasn't just a bad day. It was the moment I finally saw the truth and I couldn't unsee it. I folded my clothes slowly. A few shirts, jeans, my favorite sweater. I packed my toothbrush, some toiletries, a little photo of me and my best friend from college that I always kept hidden in my drawer. The one person who never made me feel small. I didn't need much. Just enough to start over. My room was silent, but not the peaceful kind. It was the heavy kind, the kind that presses on your chest and makes every sound echo. The walls felt like they were watching me leave, and I wondered if they'd miss me more than my parents would. Once my bag was zipped, I looked around one last time. My old bookshelf, still full of novels and cookbooks I'd bought secondhand. The tiny lamp with a crack in the base. The window that I used to sit by on rainy days, journaling my thoughts like someone might care one day. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't want to hear them justify their decision. I knew if I stayed even a second longer, their words might crawl back into my heart and make me question myself again. I couldn't afford that. So I left. Quietly. One step at a time. Down the stairs. Through the front door. Into a new life. That night I checked into a small motel just outside the city. It wasn't glamorous. The sheets smelled faintly of bleach and the paint on the walls was chipped. But it was mine even if only for a few nights. It was a place where I could breathe. The next day I found a rented room listed on a community board at a local cafe. A small attic space in an older lady's house. Dusty, warm, full of mismatched furniture and the smell of cinnamon. She asked no questions. Just handed me the key and said, "Rent's due on the 1st." I got a job at a nearby bookstore. Nothing fancy, just shelving, organizing, running the register. But it was quiet. Safe. People came in with their stories and left with new ones. I liked that. It felt like a world where words mattered more than family names or gender or tradition. Each night I made myself tea and sat by the little window in my rented room. I didn't have much, but I had peace. And peace after what I'd come from felt like luxury. Sometimes I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling and think back to that day. To their faces. To those words. "He's a man. He deserves it more. You're just a girl." And I'd whisper to myself like a promise, "I am not just anything." There were moments, of course, when the silence got too loud. When I wondered if they missed me. When I replayed everything and tried to find the exact second I stopped being their daughter and started being someone they could dismiss. But mostly I just moved forward. Because all I ever wanted was to be treated like I mattered too. Not more. Not less. Just equally. To be seen. To be heard. To be loved. Not out of obligation but because I was worth loving. And they couldn't give me that. So I gave it to myself. It wasn't easy. It wasn't glamorous. But for the first time in my life I woke up in a space that didn't make me feel small. I had nothing to prove anymore. And sometimes, that's where real strength begins. I didn't expect anything from them. Not an apology, not even a message to check if I was alive. After all, they made it very clear. The house, the money, the inheritance, everything was meant for my brother. He was the future. I was just the girl who quietly walked away. But that didn't mean I wasn't watching. I heard bits and pieces from old neighbors, from social media posts, from distant cousins who still followed me online even though they never said much. One message stood out. It said, "Hey, did you hear about your brother? He lost his job again. Big mess." I remember sitting there in my little attic room holding my mug of tea just staring at those words. My brother. The golden child. The one who was supposed to carry the family forward. The one they gave everything to because of his last name, because of his gender. The one they said deserved it more. He'd been working at some marketing firm, but apparently he showed up late one too many times, missed deadlines, and was caught lying to a client. Fired. Not long after that, the photos started showing up. I didn't look for them, they just found me like karma does. Pictures from the house. My childhood home, now turned into a party den. Loud music. Red Solo cups littered across the living room. Random people crowding the space where my mother used to hang family photos, where we used to decorate the Christmas tree. He was throwing parties every weekend, showing off like he had earned all of it. But the house looked different now, tired. Worn down. The flowers in the front yard, which my mom used to tend every Sunday, were dead. The paint was fading. Even the front door looked crooked in one of the pictures. Then came the whispers. He hadn't paid the mortgage in months. Credit card debt piling up. My parents were worried, someone said, but they still hadn't reached out to me. Not even once. I could imagine the stress growing inside that house. My mother pacing the floor. My father snapping at small things. The two of them holding on to their pride while everything around them crumbled. But I stayed silent. No calls from me. No offers to help. No, I told you so. I watched from a distance like a stranger watching a drama unfold in a town they once lived in, familiar enough to hurt, but distant enough to keep walking past. I went to work every day. Smiled at customers. Stocked shelves. Built a quiet life with dignity and peace. I kept saving. I kept building. Because I knew that while they were losing everything they once clung to, I was becoming someone they could never control again. Some nights I'd think about my brother, how he must have felt when things started to slip through his fingers. Did he panic? Did he finally feel the pressure of responsibility? Or did he still believe someone else would come and fix it for him like they always had? The truth is, I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to gloat. But I wasn't going to rescue anyone either. They had made their choice. And now they had to live in it. Strange, how you can love people and still let them fall. How you can hope they grow but not at the cost of your own self-worth. So I watched. And I stayed silent. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. It was a quiet evening. The kind of evening where the sun sets slowly, spilling gold over my small apartment window. I had just finished dinner. Nothing fancy, just a simple bowl of pasta and a cup of tea. I was folding laundry when my phone rang. The screen lit up. Mom. I stared at it for a moment. It had been exactly 1 month since I left. Not a single message. Not a single call. Not even a like on my Facebook post. Just silence. I had almost started believing they had erased me completely. So when her name popped up, I felt a strange twist in my chest. I let it ring twice more before answering. Hello. Her voice was different. Fragile. Like she had aged 10 years in the span of 30 days. Claire, she said, and then her voice cracked. I heard it, soft sobs in the background. Sweetheart. I didn't know who else to call. I didn't say anything. I just listened. We're behind on the mortgage, she said through tears. The bank's calling every day. They said they might take the house. I closed my eyes. That house. The one they said belonged to him. The one they handed over without hesitation like I was just a visitor in my own family. The one they told me I didn't deserve because I was just a girl. I took a slow breath and kept my tone calm. Steady. Like I had practiced for this moment without even knowing it. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said softly. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, shaky, waiting for the part where I'd say I'd fix everything like I always did. But I didn't. I continued, but maybe you should ask the son you chose over me. There was a long, deep silence on the other end of the line. The kind that presses against your chest like a weight. I imagined her face, stunned, confused, maybe even ashamed. But I didn't imagine it to feel better. I just needed the words to settle in. Claire, she finally whispered, it wasn't meant to hurt you. Your father and I, we thought it was the right decision. I nodded slowly even though she couldn't see me. You thought he'd take care of everything. That he was strong enough. Responsible enough. You believed in him so much that you didn't even think I was worth a conversation. She didn't argue. She just kept crying. I left without a scene, I added, my voice unwavering. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't scream or beg. I just said, okay, and walked away. I know, she said, voice trembling. That was the worst part. You didn't even fight. That's because I knew, I replied. I knew what I was worth. I just needed you to realize it too. She tried to speak again, but the words didn't come out. Just a quiet sniffle, like a child who'd been caught breaking something they couldn't replace. I worked hard, Mom, I told her gently. I got a job, I saved money. I created something small but mine. And you didn't see any of it because you didn't want to. Because you thought I was weaker. I was wrong, she whispered. We were wrong. There was. Too late maybe. But honest. Still, I wasn't calling for revenge. I didn't want her to suffer. But I needed her to feel the weight of her choices. So now you want help? I asked quietly. She didn't respond right away. I didn't know where else to go. she finally said. He's not answering our calls anymore. He says it's not his fault. I let that sink in. The same boy they once called the pride of the family was now nowhere to be found. The son who deserved it all had turned away when things got hard. I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't need to. Instead, I simply said, "I hope he finds a way." Truly. But I'm not your safety net anymore. Another long silence. Then she whispered, "I miss you." I closed my eyes again, letting those words settle into my bones. I had waited my whole life to hear them. But now they didn't carry the same power. Because I had finally learned to love myself enough not to chase people who only loved me when they needed something. "I hope you figure things out, Mom," I said gently. "Good night." And I hung up. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilty. I just stood there in the stillness of my tiny apartment, letting the silence hug me like peace. Because sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes strength is knowing when not to go back. Every day after work, I'd walk back to my small apartment with aching feet and a mind full of numbers. I had taken a cashier job at a quiet local store just to keep things steady while I sorted myself out. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me enough time to think, plan, and dream, something I never got to do back home. People assumed I was just starting over. What they didn't know was, I had already started years ago. Long before the inheritance fight. Long before the house was handed to my brother like a prize I didn't deserve. I had already begun carving my own way in silence. Back then, when I was still living under their roof, I had stumbled on a small online finance forum. Quiet women like me. Nurses, retired teachers, single moms. Sharing tips on savings, side hustles, and how to build something real from nothing. It became my secret world. I soaked up every post like a sponge. I learned about compound interest, flipping small investments, and how to use debt smartly. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom. Not my dad. Certainly not my brother. Because every time I tried to talk about money, they shut me down. "Let your brother handle that stuff. Just find a good man." So I opened a separate account. I worked part-time gigs. Tutored kids in the evenings. Managed small side jobs online. Slowly, brick by brick, I built my credit. And then one day I met someone at a workshop. Her name was Lacey. She was a retired banker who had started her own consulting business. We got talking. She liked how eager I was to learn. Over time, she mentored me, taught me how to read property contracts, how to spot undervalued listings. And one afternoon, sitting across from her at a diner, she looked at me and said, "I have a private seller looking to offload a foreclosure. It's quiet, clean, but needs some work. Interested?" I almost choked on my tea. When she gave me the address, I nearly dropped the phone. It was just a few blocks away from the house I grew up in. Same neighborhood. Same street even. "I don't know," I said nervously. "What if someone finds out?" "Claire," she said gently, "if you wait for permission to live your life, you'll be waiting forever." So I did it. I pulled together everything I had saved. Got a small loan through a private funding channel she connected me with. The paperwork didn't have my last name. One of the first lessons Lacey taught me. Always protect your identity when you're trying to move in silence. And just like that, I became a homeowner. Not a fancy mansion. Not some luxurious place. But mine. My name was on it. My choices built it. My hands had made it real. While my parents were celebrating my brother with a glass of wine in their house, I was cleaning floors and painting walls in mine. No one knew. I kept it that way. I'd visit the house on weekends, tend the small garden, repair cracks in the windows, fix light switches. I made that little home my therapy. Every nail I hammered in was a reminder. You are not weak. You are not disposable. Eventually, with Lacey's help, I turned it into a rental property. Found a quiet tenant. A retired widow who paid on time and even left me handwritten thank you notes. I reinvested that rent money. I bought into a small cleaning service business that handled maintenance for several rental units. Slowly, that business started growing. And then something unexpected happened. One of the banks that handled mortgage contracts in our neighborhood partnered with our cleaning business for monthly upkeep. And wouldn't you know, it was the same bank my parents' house mortgage was tied to. I didn't say a word. I just smiled every time I saw their account on our vendor sheet. Because behind the scenes, I had been building something they could never see coming. The best part? They didn't even know the deed had shifted. After my brother missed several payments and the bank moved to collect, the house went up for reevaluation. The private buyer, Someone I'd worked with once before, snatched it up during the early bidding. And guess who quietly became the owner again through a silent partner deal? Me. The same girl who was told she didn't matter. The same daughter who was told, "You're just a girl." They still didn't know. Not yet. But the moment Mom called me crying, begging for help, that's when I knew the truth had weight. Because I could have said yes. I could have saved the house. But I didn't. Because the house, it already belonged to me. Every hallway, every brick, every room they once told me I'd never be good enough to inherit. It was mine now. And when karma knocks on your door, sometimes it's wearing the shoes of the very daughter you cast aside. The morning the notice arrived, I was sipping my coffee like any other day when my phone rang again. It was my mom's number flashing on the screen. I could already guess the tone. Panicked, maybe even desperate. Before I picked up, I had already seen the official letter they'd slipped under the door. The house my parents and brother thought was theirs no longer belonged to them. The words stared back at me, cold and clear. Due to unpaid mortgage dues, ownership of the property has officially transferred to a new owner. The irony was almost laughable. I answered the call, my voice calm but firm. "Mom, I saw the notice." Her voice cracked. "Claire, please, we didn't expect this. We're trying to figure it all out. Can we please stay in the house? Just until we find a new place. We're lost right now." I paused. For a moment I could hear my old self, the girl who begged for love and fairness. But that girl had long been replaced by someone who learned to stand tall. "The decision isn't mine anymore," I said softly but clearly. "That's now up to the new owner." There was silence on the other end. Finally she whispered, "You know who that is, don't you?" "I do," I said. The truth was, I never set out for revenge. I never wished to hurt my family. I only wanted to be seen. To be valued. To have a chance. Life, it seems, had handled the rest. And just like that, the house that was once my childhood home had become a symbol of what I had earned quietly, without fighting or yelling. The same walls they claimed belonged to my brother now stood under my name. I could almost hear the weight of that realization sinking in for them. They called me many times after that, trying to negotiate, trying to explain, begging for more time. But I had learned something important. Sometimes the best revenge is living well and letting life's own justice speak loudest. The house was mine now, not just as a property but as proof that I was never less than anyone else. And in that moment I realized, sometimes the quiet ones are the strongest of all. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is nothing at all. Just quietly step away, disappear from the chaos, and let life take its course. That was my revenge. Not with anger or loud words, but with calm and patience. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, like your worth was ignored or your love was taken for granted, please know you are not alone. I've been there and so many others have too. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been left out or treated unfairly by those closest to you? What did you do? Share your story in the comments below. Let's support each other through these hard times. And if you're still healing, still trying to find your place in a family that doesn't always see you, I see you. I'm rooting for you every step of the way. Remember, sometimes the quietest strength is the most powerful. Keep going.